One of the greatest mysteries to ever be shown in the entirety of the Pokemon anime series definitely has to do with the GS Ball. It was something that was a pretty huge plot point, with it leading Ash and friends to the Orange Islands, which was a decent chunk of the original series as a whole. But we never got a proper conclusion to it, and even now, over 20 years later, it has some of us scratching our heads. Yo, my name is Luap, and today I want to take a deep dive into the GS Ball in the anime and give some theories as to what this ball could have given us had it been properly fleshed out all the way. Subscribe if you're a fan of Pokemon to help me reach 50k. It's totally free, and I'll even throw in a cookie for you. But anyways, the GS Ball was first mentioned in episode 81 of the original series, Palette Party Panic. This is actually the first episode of the second season of the anime, and it's a time where animes would usually like to establish their big plot points for the season. This episode first starts out by having the main trio show off their Pokemon to the audience. Being the first episode of a season, it's very important to establish their characters, while also showing newer audiences what they have to work with. As Ash is going to send out Charizard, Brock and Misty stop him, so we can get a recap of how Charizard is destructive and disobedient, which foreshadows another huge plot point that is going to happen this season. Later on, Team Rocket attacks Ash, but Pidgeotto is quickly there to defend him. They go back to Oak's lab to get Pidgeotto healed, and Misty says,
"Too bad Charizard isn't like Pidgeotto."
I know someday I'll get Charizard to listen to me too, Misty. You just wait and see.
Further solidifying the huge plot point for the upcoming season. It is here where we get dropped an even bigger bombshell for the season. Professor Oak asks Ash, Brock, and Misty to go to Valencia Island in the Orange Archipelago to retrieve a new Pokeball that his friend Professor Ivy has discovered. For some reason, this ball is special and it isn't able to be transferred normally, so they need to go manually pick it up. 2 episodes later in Pokeball Peril, Ash and friends finally arrive at Valencia Island and they head straight to Professor Ivy's lab. She isn't there, but she is in the ocean with some water Pokemon, and Brock instantly falls in love. Nothing new, but this time, can you really blame him? They head back to her lab together, and there it is, the GS Ball. While we never get any official confirmation of what the GS could stand for, I think it's most likely meant to be Gold Silver Ball, since those are the next Pokemon games in the series. This also makes sense since the top half of the ball is golden, whereas the bottom half is silver. There is an NPC in the Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon games that mentions the GS Ball, claiming that it stands for the Greatest Smith's Ball, but I think they're just lying. Further evidence to support the fact that it's the Gold and Silver Ball is that Brock outright calls it these colors.
Why is it all gold and silver?
They decided to name the ball the GS Ball due to there being a GS inscribed on the ball itself. How creative of them. Professor Ivy and her assistants have literally tried everything they could to open the ball, but to no avail. Ivy is sure that Oak is able to uncover the secrets that lie within, and I'm sure they wouldn't just bring this up to leave it unfinished, right? Right? Ash immediately calls Oak to let him know that he has the ball under his ownership and that he's gonna see Oak as soon as he can. Surely he wouldn't lie about that either, right? Right? We also kind of unofficially get introduced to regional form Pokemon in this episode, albeit anime exclusive and just strictly appearance based changes. With all of this talk about the GS Ball, you'd think that we'd have so much focus on it, but not really. In the very next episode, Ash would learn about the Orange League and officially put the GS Ball on the back burner. The GS Ball would make brief appearances and mentions throughout the Orange Island saga, but alas, nothing major ever truly came out of it.
Now get back in your Pokeball before I start bouncing you around!
After his return to Pallet Town, Ash was finally able to give Oak the GS Ball and have Mr. Samuel Oak himself examine it. After some careful examination, Oak decides that he has no clue what to do with it, and in turn he decides to ask Ash to pass it down to Kurt in Azalea Town, as he's a Pokeball master and surely has some sort of connection to it. The GS Ball is also infamously used in the games in the Alex Forest, which is next to Azalea Town, and Kurt is the one who hands the ball to the players, so surely we're getting closer and closer to finally getting this mysterious thing out of the way. The GS Ball has now been the catalyst of taking Ash not 1, but 2 brand new regions. Something as big as this has got to get resolved, I'm sure of it. Eventually, Ash and friends arrive at Azalea Town and they're able to hand over the GS Ball to Kurt. What's the outcome of this groundbreaking Pokeball in the Pokemon universe? Well, we'll never know, as after this, the GS Ball was never mentioned ever again. Now, it's not like the Pokemon anime staff had forgotten about it, they just hoped that you would. 8 years after the broadcast of this episode of Ash handing the GS Ball over to Kurt, Masamitsu Hidaka, who was a storyboard director for Pokemon, had an interview with PokeBeach.com. I'll link the entire interview down below, it's a pretty interesting read, but the gist of the interview was that the GS Ball was originally going to contain a Celebi, and it was going to be a large chunk of the Johto saga. However, after they decided the Pokemon Forever plot was also going to revolve around Oak and Celebi, they scrapped the idea and hoped that fans would forget about it. Well, we didn't. Can't blame them for scrapping it, as I do agree that it would have been a little redundant, but I feel like they could have still gone in a different direction, maybe tying the anime to the movie a bit more. This wasn't the first, and definitely wouldn't be the last time that Pokemon decides to start something in the anime, only to scrap it later for one reason or another. While there aren't many things that we can do with this information, one of the best things to do in Pokemon, or in anime in general, is to speculate and make our own theories. Johto had a lot of fun showing off different legendaries. We had our little arcs with Entei, Suicune, not Raikou, and even Logia. It would have been a whole lot of fun to get the Celebi thing a bit more expanded upon, but we didn't. Here's a way that I would have shoehorned in the GS Ball with the Johto anime if I had the opportunity to do so. During the World Islands arc, Ash would meet up with Richie and go help Silver the Lugia as per usual. Right before they part ways, Richie remembers something that he almost forgot because they were so busy with Lugia and all. When he was passing by Azalea Town, Kerr had mentioned about a boy with a Pikachu who handed him this ball, and he instantly recognized that it was Ash. On his way to see Ash is when we get the Pokemon Chronicles episode of him seeing Celebi and going back in time. Which, by the way, not only have I already recapped and reviewed this episode, but also every other episode of Pokemon Chronicles, which you should totally check out after this video. Richie hands over the GS ball to Ash and says that Kurt told him to hand it over and that he couldn't make any progress on it, but he thinks that the ball will open when the ball is ready and no amount of external forces will really change that. Ash tosses it into his bag and forgets about it. During his encounter with the Pokemon Poacher Brothers, things play out a little bit differently. In the main timeline, as we know, Ash and friends were able to stop them and were able to reunite Larvitar with its mother. However, this time, for one reason or the other, they were unable to. And after being completely stuck with the Poacher Brothers winning and having Tyranitar and Larvitar locked in cages ready to be sold, Ash lets out a cry and from within his bag a glow happens. Out comes a shiny Celebi and without hesitation uses its powers to go back in time before the Poacher Brothers had taken Larvitar and Tyranitar. Ash is the only one aware of what happened, and he uses this knowledge to not make the same mistakes and is instead able to defeat the Poacher Brothers much easier, and the rest plays on as usual. It's a subtle way to have Celebi be shown in the main anime series without making anything too drastically different. What do you think? The Celebi would go on to make an appearance in the Secrets of the Jungle movie, as well as in Pokemon Journeys, and we would all as an audience know that it's the one that helped Larvitar and friends. The GS Ball to this day remains one of the biggest mysteries in the Pokemon anime, and heck, it's even one in the Pokemon games too. If you didn't know, the GS Ball is actually in the games themselves. It was an event exclusive to the Pokemon Crystal games, and after obtaining the GS Ball from the Trade Corner attendant, through the mobile system GB and the Pokemon News machine at the Pokemon Communication Center in Goldenrod City, this was exclusive to just Japanese copies for a long time, until the Virtual Console for Wii U released Pokemon Crystal and decided to make it available for the West, by entering the Hall of Fame and going to the Goldenrod Pokemon Center. After you get it, you're supposed to take it to Kerr, who takes a look at it, and then Ilex Forest becomes somewhat restless. You go inside and place the Pokeball in the shrine, and out comes Celebi itself. A ball that looks really cool and potentially has some of the best kept secrets and Easter eggs, yet never got a satisfying ending. Not only did it not get an ending, it was just thrown to off-screen land hoping to be forgotten in time. Now that I think about it, being forgotten to time is actually kind of poetic.